let's learn functions in Python. So block of statements that can be grouped to reuse perform particular action is nothing but a function. So here, see, we have been writing a program without functions so far. Whatever we have learned. What is the benefit of functions? Benefit of functions is that code reusability. Yeah. If you want to do something multiple times, of course, if you are doing repetitively, we use loops. But if you are doing some action different times at different scenarios, where writing that every time, writing the same kind of code every time is actually a bad practice. Where instead of that, what we can do, we can actually group those statements together and name those bunch of statements grouped as a function, and we can actually refer that whenever we want that part of code to be executed. Okay. So as you see on screen, can you see what is function? You see, usually if you take any machine, what happens? Think of this as a Python functions are also like that. Okay, see some raw material we are passing on raw material, and that whole thing actually we see. Take one thing, any of the equipment, household equipment. So where if you give, rice mill, you put the raw and your wiggle, right, and there is also byproduct we get, right? The byproducts we get. So that machine takes the one input and produces the different output, and by processing that, okay, these are all functions, I suppose. Yeah, if you take for suppose likewise, can you actually describe any of the equipment which acts like takes input, produces different out the processing, after processing gives the different output? Mm. 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 Performs, yeah. What take for suppose if we take a heart, okay, human heart, it takes the input that blood, right? Yeah, it pumps blood. It takes that one kind of there are different veins. It takes that bad blood, right? And the pumps that with the other veins. So it is doing some action. So it is performing some function there. Okay. So likewise in Python also we have functions. They take some input and they produce some output. So here, so as we can see here, this is a visual representation of a kind of typical function in Python. For suppose if you have a speed, see, take a function speed. So it is taking out, it is taking input, distance and time as an input, and producing a speed as output. Okay. So what is anatomy of a function in Python? You take here, this whole function can be, you see this, what are different components here. The diff is a keyword in Python, and speed, which is the name of the function. Okay, and whatever you provide mentioned here in parentheses are arguments or parameters. And the return statement which is used to return something. Okay, return something means, for suppose here if you take this one, it is taking some raw material as input and producing some block as output. So we have input and output. So in our functions, you see, we are providing input as a parameters within parentheses. How can this function return an output? Through return statement. Okay. The return statement provides tells that Python interpreter this is the value to return when this function is called. Okay. And this is the return value, and this is a single statement we have here. The simple function, we can have multiple statements that are indented. Okay, so how can you call a function? So this is called a function definition. Okay, so why it is definition? Because nothing happens when you define a function. Okay, this is a function definition. So you're defining if this function is called, what should happen. That is what you are defining. Okay, so but to get that thing done, you need to call a function. Okay, you need to tell this function to do something. You need to call that function. How can you call that function? A function name, and within the parentheses we provide arguments. That is the input. So suppose calling a speed function is like a speed 21. Okay, and we have a built-in function, different built-in functions in Python. Like a keywords, we have len. Okay, you also need to learn all these built-in functions. So why? Because these are essentials and they provide very kind of so essential functionality. Like so for suppose you have a absolute which converts the absolute value, which returns the absolute value of given value. We learn this bin, bool. Okay, so char, vad, yeah. So these are all functions. Yes, help, dir. Okay, oct. Yes. So those are data types. Some of the functions here are also data types. Okay, because they act as both a data type, which is class, as well as a function, because they can be used as a function to convert some type to typecast. Okay, now what we have learned, let's put that into an action. Okay, so let me define speed. Speed is a rate of change of velocity. Okay, sorry, not rate of change of velocity, distance traveled by the body in certain time. Okay, so I need a distance and time. Okay, I can take a d comma t. Okay, and s equal to d by t, and I can return some s value. Now if I call speed without arguments, I will get an error, because yes, why? Because it is expecting in a function definition we mention two arguments, they are required. Okay, if calling a function without them, we get an error, because let's say there is a person, you have one helper, handyman. You ask him, bring me that, what he does, that you need to mention what to bring. Yeah, it is same thing here. It is asking us. Okay, we'll ask what to bring. Likewise, it is asking. You see, there are two arguments I'm expecting, but you haven't passed those two inputs, so we got an error. Okay, so we need to pass that speed. If I pass one argument only, if there are two arguments that are required, we get error. So now check this one. 150 distance, and let's give 3 kilometers. What is speed? 50. Okay, 50 kilometers per hour. Right, and there are different functions. Python functions are actually rich in terms of their features. Uh, we'll discuss them in further. And here is the good article. There are different types of functions in Python and different types of arguments the functions can take. So types of functions in Python, types of function arguments in Python. There are different types of arguments. We have seen positional arguments only. And here, and yeah, and there are different types of keyword arguments the Python can take. Okay, so I'll explain that briefly. For suppose here you have a speed. Okay, so there are no default values here. Okay, let's convert units. Okay, what do you need to do if you want to convert meters to centimeters? You need to multiply by 100. Okay, define 2 cm. Okay, and input, let's give input meters. I can return meters into 100. Okay, call 2 cm. 2 meters you have 200. We are good. Call here. So you see, this is a function call. What we are doing here, this is a function call. We are calling a function with a argument, and this is a function definition. We are defining a function with a bunch of statements. As you can see here, we have 2 statements. We grouped those 2 statements together and named it and call it as a speed. Got it? And so as we are discussing default arguments, okay, what are default arguments? Let's define a function. Let's define a speed only. Okay, speed. Oh, sorry. Let's write here. Define speed. Okay, I can take a distance t equal to, let's give time 1 hour by default. Okay, what that is called a default argument. Okay, so how it works, if when we define a default argument, default parameter, Python will forgive us if that default parameter is not passed. What happens if that parameter, that argument is not passed? Python will use the default value defined there. Okay, how it works, let's first print d comma d, okay, and t. First let's check that. Okay, so nothing is happening. Why? Because I have to call that. Okay, we find this one here. Okay, speed, let's pass 150. So now can you see t is there? Previously yeah, so since I haven't passed the second argument, which is t, which is a default parameter, it took that as a 1. But previously we got an error. Can you see there? T and T are not passed. Even though I haven't passed T, we got an error for T. Okay. Now, check speed 150, comma 20. Sorry. What happened T now? Why is it not 1 now? Why? Because since we haven't passed anything here, okay, so it took 1, but as we pass the second argument, it overrides the existing default value. Okay, it's like a default argument will take effect if the corresponding argument is not passed. Okay, and that is default argument. That is about default arguments. But there is a syntax here. You can't define a default arguments like this. For suppose x equal to 2 and y z, it is an error. Why? Because why? Default arguments should always follow the normal arguments. Okay, non-default arguments follow the default arguments, which means that you should define non-default parameters first. Okay, and then the default arguments. That is an error. That is the rule we need to remember. And you know already keyword arguments. What is keyword arguments? For suppose you have the speed. Okay, let's define that speed. Print d comma t. Okay, now speed, let's take 150. Okay, let's take and give this 25. Okay, so what? Yeah, we got 25 because we have passed that argument. Let's take another thing, which is keyword arguments. What is keyword arguments? We have seen it already. We can pass arguments out of order with keywords. Okay, you see this one. And if we don't pass anything, any keywords, it will take that arguments and put them into corresponding parameters we defined there. Can you see here? The first one goes to the first parameter, second one goes to the second parameter in the order. But you can take them out of order. We can pass the parameter arguments out of order by using keywords. Once you see t equal to, now you got the t150 and d25. Okay, and so another rule we need to remember here is you can't pass them out like this. Why? Because you should pass first positional arguments and then followed by positional arguments you have to pass keyword arguments. So but this is right. First you have to give, because otherwise Python doesn't know how to put them in the order. Okay, now you can give 150. Okay, and now you can give t equal to 90. Okay, got it? That is the thing. Okay, and we have different types of arguments, as you can see here: regular, positional, default, keyword only. Okay, non-default arguments, keyword only, default arguments, and different types of arguments are here, and we will see them in detail in the next session. So what we have seen here is regular arguments, we have seen default, we have seen keyword, we have seen variable length and variable length keyword and variable length position arguments we will see, and the keyword only arguments, that is a new feature in a Python 3 that we will see in the coming session.